Good morning. Welcome back to this episode of Haas Federal Advisors. My name is Dallin. It is great to spend some time with you today. Today is a Q&A episode where I answer your questions that you have submitted over the last couple of weeks. And if you have a question that you want me to answer about your federal retirement, federal benefits, about investing or taxes or anything else in between, Social Security, Medicare, there is a link below in the podcast and on the YouTube channel to submit those, and that is how I come up with the questions for, of course, every Saturday, these episodes. So let's dive right in, and there's 4 questions today. Question number 1. They say, I currently work at a VA hospital. I have been investing 15% of my income into the traditional TSP and also 15% into the Roth TSP. But I recently listened to one of your videos, and you had mentioned if you are married filing jointly, so if you file your taxes jointly with your spouse, and you make over $209,000 per year, you are not eligible to invest into a Roth IRA. My concern is that I was not aware of that, and I have already invested $10,670 this year into the Roth IRA this year. What will happen to that money? I don't want to do something illegal. However, I don't want to lose that money as well. Thank you for your assistance. Okay, so the core of his question is kind of based on misinformation a little bit. So the first thing we have to clarify and clean up is there's a big difference between the Roth TSP that you have at your job inside the TSP, okay, the Roth TSP, and a Roth IRA. That is one big kind of misuse of the word that I hear a lot among federal employees, that people often use those interchangeably. A Roth TSP and Roth IRA, they are very, very distinct and different and separate, okay? And the rules for each of them are very different. So it sounds like that this person here is completely talking about the Roth TSP. I don't think they're even using a Roth IRA. A Roth IRA, again, is separate from the Roth TSP. It's outside of your work completely, and you can get it, set one up at Schwab, at TD Ameritrade, at any of these big brokerages and banks. You can get a Roth IRA, okay? Because he says, hey, I already put $10,000+ into he calls it a Roth IRA, but you can't put $10,000 into a Roth IRA. He's talking about his Roth TSP. So once you understand that there's a big difference between the two, okay, the first question is, okay, is there a earnings limit for the Roth TSP at your job? No, there's not. So you could earn as much as you'd like. You could make $1 million a year. It doesn't matter. You can always contribute into the Roth TSP, okay? There is no earnings limit. Now, on the Roth IRA, outside of your job, there is an earnings limit, and it changes a little bit every year. But yeah, it's a little over $200,000 if you're married filing jointly. If you make, it's right about $200,000. If you're making about right in there, then you can no longer contribute directly, at least into a Roth IRA. Now, there is potential for a backdoor Roth IRA and things like that you could definitely look up and get more information on. I've done some videos on that as well that you're welcome to check out. But long story short, you have to understand there's a big difference between a Roth TSP and a Roth IRA. And just like the difference between a traditional TSP, your normal TSP, and a traditional IRA, there's vast differences. And so, especially when you retire and you're trying to decide where money should go, you have to understand the different rules that apply to the different accounts so that you make the best decision. Because often many dollars, hundreds and thousands of dollars are decided just by what type of account you keep your money into retirement, okay? And again, I've got a long article and video on the TSP versus IRA, doing a comparison side by side so you could actually see some of those differences there. Okay, question 2. They say, I am a federal employee and thinking about retiring within 3 to 4 years. I need help to plan my retirement, and I'm looking for a fee-based retirement planning expert. Okay. So you definitely came to the right spot. So our firm at Haas Federal Advisors, that's what we do. Okay, we help federal employees retire all day long. And I didn't make this question up. I actually get tons of these types of questions in the link below all the time. Like, hey, I'm looking for help. Where do I go? right? And so bottom line, we do this for sure. Our firm is what they call fee only. So we don't have any commissions. We don't sell any products. We don't do any of that. We help you. We help you, right? So if you're interested in that and working with our firm or any other firm, right, go to their website. That's generally the first place to go. On our website, on hawesfederaladvisors.com, there's a link up at the top right that says work with us. You click that. You can make an appointment straight to our calendar from there. Be warned, we do book out pretty far in advance. And so if you want to get something in as soon as you can, you probably should get it booked because as of today, we're booked out a couple months, right? So something to consider. But again, there's lots of great people out there that help with retirement. Our firm, what we really, really enjoy and what we specialize in is, of course, working with you as federal employees to make sure that you understand really all the nuances of the benefits in retirement that you enjoy. So that was question 2. Question 3. They say, can we take my wife's IRA and roll it into my TSP? They say, I was told at a retirement workshop that we could, but I can't seem to find documentation that supports this. And of course, he says that his wife is still living. Okay, this is a great question. So generally, where this gets confused is, in general, you can roll an IRA into the TSP. That's generally allowed. Now, when it's not allowed is you can never mix spouses' retirement accounts. For example, this specific question says, hey, can I move my wife's IRA into my TSP? And the answer is no, you cannot. You cannot mix your spouse's retirement accounts with your retirement accounts, okay? They are owned individually and you can't get them mixed up. Now, if one spouse passes away, you can move stuff over and generally like that, but it doesn't sound like that's the case. So when you're both living, you have to keep your retirement accounts separate. That's just the rules. You can't put them together at all. Okay, now, if this federal employee had an IRA under his own name too, he could roll his into his TSP, but again, you can't mix spouses' retirement accounts. Okay, question number 4, last question. They say, I really love your videos. Keep them coming. I certainly will. I enjoy them as well. They say, I remember in one of your videos, you indicated that the SCD, or the service computation date, on my SF50s, your standard form 50, is used for leave purposes only. Now, one little note here, the SCD, you could also find that on your leave and earnings statement. You'll see it there. It's near the top normally. And again, that stands for service computation date. Okay, let's keep going here. They say, my first question is there any way we can reach out to OPM and ask exactly for the date, in my case, that I will hit my 20 years? Because I'd like to know this before I submit, of course, a retirement application. Okay, so this is a great question. So long story short, what they're saying, and they're right on, is that service computation date does not actually always line up with what they call your RSCD, or your retirement service computation date, okay? When it comes to knowing how many years of service you have, you want to know what your retirement service computation date is, not just your SCD. Your SCD is used for leave purposes, right? To calculate how much leave you accumulate over time, that sort of thing, okay? Now, if your career is very, very simple, where you started on one date, you don't have any military time, you didn't take any part-time, you didn't do anything crazy, it was full-time from the beginning all the way to the end, then maybe your service computation date is right on. It depends. I've seen some that are right on, they're exactly the same, but I've seen many, they're not the same at all. It can be off by years, right? So, I mean, the first place you can go is you could kind of look back at your record and say, okay, how many years have I worked full-time for the government? You could start adding it up. But again, it is really nice to have an official document that says, hey, this is how many years of service you have. This is exactly when you can retire with 20 years or whatever it is, right? Now, it's often hard to actually get these numbers, to get exactly the dates that you will hit the 20 years and things like that. But the first place to start is to talk with your agency, your HR, whoever it is, your contact, right? That you ask retirement questions to, right? And you could ask your supervisor, and they'll be able to point you at least in the right direction. And a good place to start is try to ask for a certified summary of federal service, of your service, okay? And not all agencies and HRs do this very often. Sometimes they kick and scream because they don't want to do it. It takes some time for them to actually dig into your records, especially if your career is kind of complicated, where you've got some things in there, whether it's leave without pay, whether it's part-time. When you start getting kind of nuances, military time in your career, it gets a little more complicated. But the first place, again, talk to your HR, talk to your agency and say, hey, can I get a certified summary of your service, right? Or say, hey, I'm trying to figure out my exact date. Can you help me out? And they'll be able to point you in the right direction, at least, of, okay, this is who you need to talk to. Again, sometimes they kick and scream, and sometimes you got to be very persistent about trying to find this information. Now, worst case, you could kind of ballpark it yourself, right? But you certainly want to talk to them, right? And sometimes they only want to talk to you if you're getting close to retirement. But again, be persistent. And they may be busy, but do the best you can. I wish there was a super simple way to figure out what your retirement service computation date was. But there's no, place you log in online and there it is, right? It just doesn't exist. They really don't calculate it until the very end unless you ask them to do that. So it's worth doing, right? And no matter where you are in your career, you want to nail down that date is, whatever that is, right? So that you know that you could retire at a specific date and you have everything in a row. And we are really trying to make a big push here in the last part of 2021 to really get this information out to as many federal employees as possible. So if you found value here and say, wow, I think my coworkers, my colleagues, I think they would really benefit from this, please share, right? That helps us out, it helps them out, it helps you out. When everyone is informed, then there's less bad answers given at the water cooler. There's less misinformation that's circulating, which that misinformation hurts everybody that it touches. We don't want that. We want good information to get to as many people as we possibly can. So please consider subscribing, join the community. It helps us out a lot, and hopefully it grows the community to get as much information out there as we possibly can. So have a great rest of your day. We'll see you next time.